mics are up. I need to move. Okay. Good morning, Lagos. Welcome to Smooth Breakfast. If you're just joining us on Smooth 98.1 with Folu and myself.
Valentine,
This
welcome.
morning, yes, we're about to go into the details. You can send a message to WhatsApp 080944409. You can start hashtag freshly pressed 91. Also on YouTube, Smooth 91 FM Lagos. Just leave a comment on the comment section and please subscribe to our YouTube. Our first story is from Vanguard newspaper. British Prime Minister said yesterday that Nigeria is of the highest number of poor people in the world. And this is just a few weeks, a few weeks after the body actually released the index, the poverty index of the world, putting Nigeria as the poverty capital of the world. And we're seeing all the statistics, and it's scary. I mean, did it require Theresa May to say this to us for us to realize that is this bad, Devoe?
Why is she speaking? She's speaking on us.
Well, as always, when the other side of the skin speaks, we seem to take notes. And it's not the best about how we take our own fundamentals and policies. I think we should own our own principles and we should know what is important to ourselves. However, she is on an African tour. I think she started in South Africa. She will be in Kenya and also Nigeria. And she alluded to the fact that Nigeria is a home to the poorest people in the world. And I think one of the indicators that she gave, though, that there are many, and obviously there are many who are very well assured that over 87 million Nigerians are living below. That's, if you put that in, that's about a fish day. Yes. Now, most times you need to address infrastructure. Just the implementation addresses wealth, surmounts. And trying to provide this because of the attendance, finance of their administration.
Small and medium scale enterprises, they've been trying to empower. Even the Empower program that the vice president stated yesterday in Abuja at the MBA conference, saying that over 500,000 graduates have been empowered by that scheme. Do you think those things are the steps actually giving any reasonable results?
The Empower Project initiative is wise because if you don't empower the people to fish, at the end of the day, you'll still be handing out fish to them. And obviously, we don't have a budget to cover that. But as always, government can't do all. What I expect is that where government lacks financing, they move policies.
Yes.
That's where the private sector comes in, not just local, domestic, even foreign. And here is Theresa May coming to say that she wants to sign deals. Now, in as much as she and some other European or even American bodies are trying to see how they can sign deals with us, what is our foreign policy? What is our plan to ensure that we maximize, we optimize their presence? One, what is our plan that we ensure that our borders are open to, as you can see, African free trade or even intercontinental or global trade? That's where it matters. These are the things that ensure that your country is on the right track towards economic empowerment and liberties.
Thank you very much, Devoe. We'll move on now to a New Telegraph newspaper. We have this report. They're still talking statistics, but there's still not a positive one. 1,331 Nigerians died in road crashes in 3 months, and that is a staggering number that's released according to the report from the second quarter of 2018. The figure contained in the Nigeria Bureau of Statistics road transport data second quarter of 2018 report released yesterday in Abuja. I mean, let's go into this, Fred. A lot of deaths. Now, we have records from Boko Haram, the terrorism clashes, casualty figures, almost competing with this number. These are some of the things pointing to a large-scale, lack of infrastructure, to put it lightly. Don't you think?
Yeah, I agree with you. Actually, when I saw this story, I was taken because something else that's missing out of here is like 8,437 were injured in the same quarter.
Yes.
So it's a total of like 10,000 people that were
Harmed.
either harmed, exactly, harmed in this quarter. And as you said, it speaks to like bad infrastructure. You know, so we've just you spoke earlier about like corruption and how that's affected us. So these are all the other areas where you find where corruption, things not done properly, comes to harm us, right? And I don't know if it speaks to our lack of of value for our citizens, because if we actually value our citizens, like in a case where in another country they will go to war if 200 people are harmed, we're like not even blinking that we're 10,000 people were
Absolutely harmed
in a
by
quarter.
road
Yeah.
incidents. But the other thing, I know that you both mentioned infrastructure, but let's also look at our behavior on the
Yeah.
roads. People are constantly disregarding road laws. We know that our public transport ignore it completely. I know of a musician who is still in a coma because he was hit by a danfo that ran a red light, and this happens so often. I mean, if we're going to talk about lack of infrastructure, let's also look at ourselves and what it is that we're doing out on these streets, and maybe a lack of enforcement of laws.
Yeah, I agree to that too. Like, because if you see some of this, I don't know, this it doesn't dig deeper into understanding these numbers, right?
Yeah.
But I want to understand that probably a lot of it would, or some of it would have happened with you go to like a car park or whatever, you go to a transport service and you get on the transport service, right? And you're now dependent on the ability of whoever is like operating this vehicle, and you don't have, I don't know if you have the liberty to complain, or if this person was vetted, if the car was like, if you check the car, if
Exactly.
so it's like you're just at the mercy of whatever happens on the road, right?
Yes.
And those two, like as you said, like if we're taking responsibility, like taking responsibility of the operator, and then how do we like citizens even put checks, that I'm and the people taking this I want to believe, like if you had the choice, then you won't put yourself in this state, right? So the person taking this decision probably doesn't have the wide range of choices to pick other than this, right?
Yeah.
So, but how does that person empower themselves to actually put those vetting processes with?
In place.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for that,
It's
friend.
pointing out a wide-scale problem here. So let's go back to the story from Daily Times newspaper. National Grid gets boost with additional power transformers. Now, according to the story, Devoe, it said in line with the federal government's policy on incremental power, TCN under its Transmission Rehabilitation and Expansion Program (TREP) has again completed the installation of 100 MVA, 60 MVA, and 60 over 66 MVA type power transformers in 3 different transmission substations. Should we be excited about this? Any marked improvements to be noticed in our power sector?
Yes, it is, and I think it's some good news coming from the power sector. We've just been hearing woes on top of woes, even to the extent that some of the players among the discos are ready to give back their licenses in exchange for discounted funding. Here, the TCN, that's the transmission aspect, that's the middleman.
Yeah.
They're saying that they have implemented increased transmission capacity through the additional of some of the substation transformers within where now Ado Ejigbo, Bida, and Ado Ekiti. Okay, now this ultimately accumulates to about 900 MVA. Which is added to what they had before.
Yes.
Now, simply speaking, what they've done is that they've increased capacity for the Gencos to evacuate power. Remember, that sometime now, Fashola had been saying that evacuation was a problem.
Yeah.
Now, which also means that the discos would have more power. So hopefully, we should add about 1,000, hopefully, to the 4,500 that we have been struggling
So
with.
does that mean we'll have more light?
Yes, to commensurately, you would have more lights. Now, this affects Ejigbo affects what do you call it? Shagamu, Ikotun, Ijegun, Idumu, Ikeja distribution side.
Okay.
The Ado side of Bida affects the Abuja electrical capacity, Bida Town, Lemu, Army Barracks, Dogo, and Kutugi, while the Ado Ekiti affects the Benin Electricity Distribution Company, as well as Ado Ekiti University, Ikere, Aromoko, and environs. So those within these locations should be seeing incremental or better power supply.
Yeah.
Now, so it is good news. We only wish that they could expedite this. So instead of transmission, transfusion, you will see some steady transmission of power.
But I mean, taking a look at this in conjunction with things, for example, in Lagos, let's focus a little bit here on other things that are happening with the laws that have been passed, and we're beginning to see private sector get a little bit more involved. I mean, it does feel, or it does appear as though there are quite a number of quite solid moves that have been happening, despite the heavy criticism that the minister has faced in recent times about how judiciously he's been able to execute his
Well,
job.
you know, he was branded the Minister of Darkness simply because people refuse to listen or understand the process.
Absolutely.
He is bound by policies. He's been frustrated actually by legislation, which is why most times our beef with the National Assembly is that you hold the realms of how these ministers will perform, even though they have great intentions. Without the legislation or commensurate legislation and regulation, they're going nowhere. So let's hope that they support Fashola before their tenure runs out to even create more liberalization within that sector so that we can have more power.
Busy lobbying for 2019.
Talking about lobbying and court processes. Now, let's look at the legal processes surrounding Saraki's impeachment or impeachment talks, really. So, Devoe, I'll stay with you on this story from New Telegraph newspaper. It says the Federal High Court sitting in Abuja has ordered a stay of action on any plan towards the impeachment of the Senate President, Dr. Bukola Saraki, pending the determination of a suit filed by some senators challenging such planned impeachment. What are your thoughts on this?
First of all, this is not much of a story. I said eku, good governance. It's about time we, the citizens, keep focus on what is important to you and me. So while there's a lot of horseplay, politicking, and all the politics that takes place among politicians, we should keep our eye on the ball. The long and short of this is that, yes, some people were grieved with Saraki and they made moves to get him stopped. And another set who were in support have gone to court and they've gotten their ruling to stay, how did they say it? To keep the status quo.
Yes.
And what they've done is that they've tied the Attorney General and Minister of Justice, the IG Police, and the DSS from forcefully removing him until some of the matters can be addressed fully. That is for politicians. At the end of the day, even though it borders on the democratic interpretation of who should be the Senate President, it is lacking in merit as to its benefits to the common man. As they say, how much does that change the price of Gary in the market?
Thank you very much for that, Devoe. Quite a few messages have come through, so let's get through a couple of them. MI from Akoka says, great words. We should use the policy framework to stimulate wealth creation and poverty levels will drop naturally. You won't reduce poverty by giving handouts. These programs need to teach skills. Now, Theresa may not have been malicious with her comments, which are facts, by the way. It means that we'd better get ready for her when she comes. Cool, we are not bothered. While we've got more coming in still, Henry Manuel says, I can't excuse our disgraceful infrastructure, but if you look deep into the MBS data from Q1 and Q2, overspeeding is actually the major cause of the road accidents, and as individuals we can most certainly do better. Thank you very much for that. Moving on now, and I'm coming back to you, Fred, for this story from the Punch newspaper. It was a story actually that gained traction a lot through social media. I know a number of people saw pictures of this young 4-year-old girl who is missing. Now, the Punch has this headline, police arrest the orphanage owner over missing girl found in Edo State. Now, the orphanage owner is Kehinde Imarigbe, and she's the owner of God's Home Orphanage. And this was over the discovery of missing 4-year-old Elo Ogidi, who was reportedly stolen during a church service at Christ Embassy in Oregon in Lagos State. Now, she has been returned. She was found in the orphanage last Friday. As we go through the story, Fred, the police are just saying that, listen, she was found in suspicious circumstances, but the orphanage owner says a man called Mr. Chukuma brought her there, said he was a father, but he was leaving her in the care of the orphanage because himself and the mother were having a dispute, and actually showed up quite regularly to drop money, told them that, listen, she doesn't really speak English. The concern here is the police action on this, but what are your thoughts on this story, also vis-a-vis kidnappings that tend to happen quite a lot, and trafficking, that we're seeing a huge problems of trafficking in the country.
So when I saw this story, I've just been trying to Google how to set up an orphanage in Nigeria. Like, what's the process? And I saw like 3 articles that alluded to this, but the only thing was like, oh, you have to make sure you're registered with the authorities.
Yes.
So it's not
It
clear.
can be a bit tricky, actually.
Yeah, like, so what's so I want to know, is there a process? So who is allowed to set up an orphanage, or is there a procedure that you're introduced to? So in case when someone brings a child to you, you make sure you're following these procedures.
Yeah.
Because something that jumps to me is like, okay, a gentleman brings a child to you, and you say the child is 4 years old. So even if they can't speak French, I think that and I don't know, I guess there are a lot of things that are not being said. Okay, how's the child acting around this man? She said they look alike. How's the child acting around the person? Can you also get information from this child to make sure that it correlates with the information you're getting? She said she faulted herself for not making a report to the police.
Yes.
But it's because the child wasn't actually outrightly abandoned.
Yes.
But is there a procedure that you must follow? So if there's a procedure you must follow, especially if there are a lot of child trafficking issues
Incidents, yeah.
around, Nigeria, so I was just trying to put all the thing together. Like, okay, so is this? Yeah, you could be a case. It could clearly be a case of just being negligent.
Yes.
Her just being negligent with the situation, but where's the procedure? Like, that's what I was kind of keen on trying to figure out.
Absolutely, and that's a really important thing. Thank you very much for pointing that out. Any comments as to the police outright arresting her in this situation? Shouldn't there be some level of an investigation?
Yeah, they
perhaps?
should investigate. But I was glad, not glad. Okay, I was impressed that they could even find this child, because even in places like America, they're very advanced in like procedures. Like, it's child missing cases are almost impossible, or they're difficult to locate the child.
Now, the child Elo had been missing from the beginning of July, and around the early August, the family and friends intensified their campaign on social media. Actually, they flooded the space with a lot of images of this girl. A lot of people came across it, and it was one such person who said they thought they saw her in an orphanage, and that person reported to the police.
Okay. Yeah. So even in case in America, that's done too.
Yes, you're
and you
correct.
still
You have
don't
Amber
find,
Alerts, Red
and you
Alerts,
still don't
exactly.
find this person. So to some, I guess we have to give a little bit of kudos to the police for locating or taking action. But there still needs to be investigation, right? Which they say they're trying to do. But I still go back to the orphanage owner, because also in my search for how to set up an orphanage, I kept seeing things that said it's a lucrative business
over checks and balances
to run an orphanage. So what's let's not get it's a good cause, but let's make sure that we're following due process.
Thank you very much for that, Fred. But I'm going to stay with you for our next story from the Daily Times. The federal government inaugurates a panel on prerogative mercy. So speaking of doing good works, now the federal government has inaugurated this panel. The inauguration was done by the secretary to the government of the federation, Boss Mustafa. I do still love that name, Boss. But this is a very interesting panel. Now it's a 4-year tenured committee that is supposed to help the president in the discharge of his responsibility of not only granting pardon to deserving prisoners and ex-convicts, but also reintegrating them into society. It's also working towards decongesting prisons nationwide. Now, for a long time on this show, we've spoken about our overly congested prisons. We've had so many stories and reports of people constantly breaking out of prisons. We've had so many reports of people languishing in prisons that haven't even been arraigned yet. What are your thoughts on this move by the federal government?
So you mentioned that the aim is at decongesting the prisons in the country. I want to have faith, right, that the aim here, or the whoever is going to get the pardon is actually meriting for this pardon, right? And it's not now another case of, I can I can use this to, leverage things that we don't really want to be promoted in our environment, right? We have decongested prisons, and a lot of the prisoners, if you get in there, would find out that they're there for maybe not having someone to vouch for them,
Absolutely.
someone to
Misdemeanors.
exactly, someone to or just being at the wrong place at the wrong time. But are this the people that are going to be getting the pardon? Are they going to because if you don't have someone to vouch for you before getting the prison, you're probably also at the lower, strata when it comes to getting visibility or getting the authorities to pay attention to you.
Right.
And
And those are really the people that the authorities should be paying attention to.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you very much for that, Fred. Let's hope that this committee actually does focus in that direction. But let's keep it moving. Up next, the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria, Devoe, and Labour are planning a 2,800 unit housing scheme. Now, it's supposed to be the first phase that they're going to kickstart in 2 states and Abuja in conjunction with the Nigerian Labour Congress, the Trade Union Congress, and the Nigeria Employers Consultative Association. They're going to launch a 100-unit housing estate for Voice of Nigeria in the Federal Capital Territory. After that Abuja launch, there's going to be Yola and Umahia as well. So that's Adamawa State and Abia State. Rather interesting. We've seen the Federal Mortgage Bank a little bit more visible in the past couple of months. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, it's also an indicator of good governance, although the deficit that they're having to address is monumental. Well, this is for workers, and the password for them to benefit from this is they must be registered members of these trade unions. That's the TUC, the NLC, NECA.
So there goes a suggestion that the unions are not useful.
Yes.
They can be useful for you to get a house.
Secondly, they also must be contributing to the National Housing Fund managed by the Federal Mortgage Bank. Now, I think for some years that fund has been in dispute.
But I was going to say, don't the unions, I feel that it's written as though the unions contribute to that National Housing Fund. So by your being a member of the union, that contribution is almost always
No, they don't contribute, but they form aggregated bodies.
Right.
So this gives, in terms of financing, the leverage for the federal government mortgage bank to be able to provide the mortgage facility for them. Now, the details of the mortgage aren't given here, but I think it's actually, I think it's well beyond 15, 20 years, thereabouts, but it's a proper mortgage from the federal government.
Absolutely.
Now,
with zero equity in some cases, because we did actually do a similar story talking about this National Housing Fund a few weeks ago. So if the house you're looking at purchasing is below a certain amount, is zero equity contribution.
Now, this is what we expect. This is to address the housing infrastructure deficit. Now, even though they're planning in the first phase to do about 2,800 homes in 14 sites, which is about 200 in the 6 geopolitical zones, they're coming against a deficit of about 3.75 million. So this is the beginning of a very long journey. Now, Lagos State also on its own has said that they will support this and also working with private developers to create housing by about 20,000 new units by 2020. That's in about 2 years for all classes. And it's important that the issue of all classes is stated. Even in the federal mortgage one, you have houses like semi-detached bungalows, blocks of 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, and 3 bedroom. We are all not earning the same thing. I mean, Val,
Yes.
I'm on minimum wage, so I think a 1 bedroom is suitable for me. Yes, or a 1 room. So it's important that we mention that all classes are being addressed here, so that each and every one can have a home. Now, apart from the building of homes, I think the Lagos State should address town planning because it's just an
Major
issue. We need
problems.
efficiency in town planning and also building regulations. Ease of business is supposed to address this, but Lagos being the city center for many of the commercial entities needs to step up on its effectiveness of town planning.
Before we have another AFLA case.
I think it's also important to mention that when Devoe used the example of him being on minimum wage, we all just sort of
Shuddered.
Yes.
I wasn't sure if it was
Or
actually
like
speaking
excuse
about
I'm a common Nigerian. We speak for the people.
And very quickly, let's move on to our final story, Devoe. So the EFCC are back in the news. This time they're seeking a law to criminalise project abandonment. Yes, you heard it right. This story is from the Guardian newspaper, and Devoe, I'm just going to go straight to you for your thoughts on this one. New legislation against corrupt behaviour by political office holders. What does this mean?
Yes, I think the EFCC is doing their work, and this is a financial crime, and they've gotten to the root of how money is escaping. What they're saying here is that they would no longer tolerate, and they're going to put laws to back it up, that will address or deter governments who abandon projects, especially when monies have been committed to them. And they said where state funds have been invested. And they give an example, the Niger Delta Ministry, 90% of its projects have been abandoned. Let me say that again. 90% of the projects have been abandoned, meaning that money has flown to Siberia. Then we now have to start talking about investing again or starting a new project. And they're saying this has come about by poorly conceived, politically motivated projects, lack of continuity, and the non-adherence to procurement and contractual agreements, whereby obviously you know where the cronies enjoy from. So the VP was speaking at this and saying that the PDP berated them that they didn't develop the country with roads, ports, and railway systems when we were earning much higher. And now that they're earning 60% less, they're still having to do that. Although the PDP responded sharply, but at the end of the day, it's not about the politics. It's about what we have as a nation and what we're able to do with it. And in an instance where we don't have much coming out, like I always said, provide the policies that enable other people to support you. China has been doing that to some extent. Mrs. May will be in town. We need to lock her down and ensure that Britain brings more pounds into this location so that we can all reap from the daily dearth of infrastructure that we don't have.
They're trying to bring more pounds into the UK. They're leaving the block, remember?
Exactly,
they have big issues.
Jide from VI says, I was once in a Keke Mawa whose rider ran a red light. I challenged him and his response was, Oga, you know they're in a hurry. You know they're in a hurry. I was in another one on another day, in a different day, who stopped at a red light. Others were riding past us and two of the passengers on board verbally harassed him for waiting. It took me and the other passenger to defend him before they kept quiet. One of the things most Nigerians lack is civility.
Yikes.
Here's another one from Yinka. Yinka says, Devoe, you just like Wahala Shah. What is our foreign policy? Did we ever have one? Let me burst your head. Go out there and ask anyone on the streets of Lagos what your Nigerian dream is. They will tell you one of these two things. One, to relocate to Canada or to hustle to build your own house and escape the shackles of the landlord. And yet you expect Nigeria to have a foreign policy. Do we even have a mission statement, a vision statement, or even an objective?
Damning words there. We've got more still coming in up on Twitter with the hashtag FreshlyPressed981. Steve Obiako says, on housing problems, there are houses, but they're not affordable. Guti, Koi, Lekki, Studio, etc. You will see empty houses. That majority of Nigerians cannot afford, and that's part of the poverty indices that Theresa May spoke of. While Chika says, the inauguration of a prerogative of mercy by the federal government is another misplaced priority. Instead, they should empower the judiciary for speedy dispensation of justice, unless the move is geared towards releasing their political thugs. Chika, that's spoken by someone who has clearly not really looked at the issue we have in our prisons or seen the people that are languishing there. There are a number of people that do need this, and let's hope that they focus on the right people who do.
And that's the end of the show. Freshly Pressed 981. Lagos in 15 minutes will actually talk sports inside the locker room. Special thanks to our analysts, Fred and Devoe Okorie, for coming in. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, keep it here. Smooth 98.1.
Get quick access to loans from Page Financial.
Right.
Minimum wage.
Huh?
Mr.
Yes, so you know
It's a minimum wage. All of us just looked at you like, let's hear where you're going with this.
We're surviving.
Let's hear where you're going with this,
We're
Devoe.
surviving.
Minimum wage.
That thing is pitiful. But
Oh,
there's
today
something
is
that
even
I-
Elo's birthday. Happy birthday to the young girl.
Hello.
Yes, the girl that was kidnapped now. Today is her birthday. Because I
Did you not do Leah
I followed
Shaibu's
this story. Of course, we
story?
spoke about Leah yesterday.
The
We
girl
spoke
was
about
spitting
Leah
fire.
yesterday. Well, we
Get
didn't,
me
we
out
don't
of
speak
here.
Hausa, so we don't really know because the thing was in Hausa. Yeah, and BBC has a story that her dad confirmed it's her. Because
If we follow,
DSS needed to verify the voice.
yes, if we follow the principle of
But we don't know if it's
negotiation,
actually recent.
keep the biggest fish for last. So the amount they'll pay for Leah will be more than what they pay for the remaining
other girls,
hundreds
yeah.
combined. Someone is going,
Having a great Christmas.
man.
And they're using religious sentiments in their favor.
Of course.
Madam.
And you know the worst part? I know the